Hi everyone, I'm Jon Grauman, the founder of Resident. We created Resident Reserve to show you what it means to be a resident of Napa Valley. Wine sits at the heart of everything in Napa. It's what captivated and inspired me to start splitting my time between here and LA. The depth for this craft goes so much deeper than most people ever see. The science, the chemistry, the soils, and of course the stories play a vital role in the magic behind making world-class wine. In this episode, we're going to take a slightly different approach, shifting the focus on the winemaker behind the bottle, the genius behind the curtain, that is. My guest today is none other than Russell Bevan, a hit maker who has produced 45 100-point wines over his illustrious career and more than 300 wines that have achieved scores of 97 points or higher. Russell is a legendary figure here in the Valley, known for making big, opulent wines that are only outmatched by the size of his personality. Come see for yourself. This is Russell Bevan and his wineries, Bevan Cellars and Adversity. Oh, nice. Wish you could go a little faster. Oh, Jesus. Funny running into you here.
Well, when you're at the top of the world in Napa Valley, well, what better place than to share a glass of wine with somebody you love?
I'm telling you. Well, this is my dear friend Russell Bevan, a iconic, legendary winemaker here in the Valley, and we are quite literally at the very top of the valley. And we might be at the top of the world. This is the highest point I've certainly ever been in Napa Valley. We are sitting above Pritchard Hill, above Lake Hennessy, looking down. Why on earth have you brought me all the way up here other than to show me this incredible vineyard, which is really kind of what, let's start there, because I know as a winemaker, especially one such as yourself that makes so many wines, it's all about sourcing the fruit from really great sites.
Dirt matters, and we're literally here at the high point of the valley. And all of this soil here is 250 million year old plankton that's been compressed, and it's now called chert. And if you look at all the different blocks, and we have all these fabulous monopoles throughout this Phelan Vineyard property, and there's different colored chert on so many of the different blocks. Then we have some blocks that have some soil and alluvial, and it's such a diverse site. And this wind that you feel and the sunshine that shines all day just makes this a magical singular site. And we're drinking the Cabernet Sauvignon that comes from the Hefe block that's right behind us.
Okay.
And this is a site where when you taste this wine, it doesn't taste like valley floor. It's so incredibly unique. There's licorice, you get that anise, and all of these crazy wild flavors come from the fact that we're in nature. You look around, that this was only built and developed because one man, Jeff Phelan, had a vision to do something unique and spectacular, and it shows in the wine. And when you get with a winemaker and you want to see what makes their heart pitter-patter, this is the kind of place that does that. I brought Thomas Brown up here one time and said, Thomas, somebody else needs to work with this fruit, and you're one of the most gifted people on the planet when it comes to Cabernet Sauvignon. And we got up here and we walked, and he says, this is what makes me excited. He says, at this point in time, only so many things will make my heart race.
Yeah.
This makes my heart race. And each and every time I come up here, I'm blown away. I mean, I got married right there, 20 yards below us.
That's awesome.
And I still come up to this vineyard and am captivated by the awesomeness of the views and the soil and the power. And this is one place that gives you something singular and magical. And where else should we start this journey together?
Preach. I don't know where to even go from that. That's beautiful and poetic. All right, so you got married right here.
I got married right here. So I was up here. I walked down to the song Right Round by Flow Rider. Heidi drove up in her Tesla, parked here, and she had it in the party mode where the doors open and they go up and down.
Yeah.
And she cranked the tune Gold Digger and walked out as the most beautiful bride there has ever been, as the crowd stood there looking at the two of us and thinking, okay, he walked down to a song that said, from the top of the pole, I watch you go down. And she walks down to a song basically claiming she's going to take every dime I've ever made, and it was perfection.
Oh my God. You know, that's a perfect segue, Russell, because you're a big personality in this valley. One might even say a controversial figure in the valley. Tell me about that.
I'm the guy who gets in trouble a lot because I've gone to AVA tastings and told them, look, we're not doing justice at our tastings because we're not only pouring the best wines, we're pouring some wines of moderate quality, not excellent quality. I've told people that we need to go to an AOC program like they have in Italy. I want people who farm and have amazing dirt to be acknowledged for it. I think that Napa Valley can be complacent, and there's so much wealth here and so many egos that sometimes excellence gets forgotten. And I've been a little loud in talking about the fact that we need to take Napa to the next level. And I love to drink. I love to play with my friends and be loud and get in trouble. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of the bad guy who tells everybody we have so much work to do, and Napa needs to now take it up to the next level.
I don't think that makes you the bad guy. It certainly makes you a controversial, and that I'll acknowledge. But what I love about you is that you do have a big voice. You're not afraid to use it, but it's not hot air. You have something to say. You have something of substance and sustenance to actually talk about how we can be better. And all of it is driven and rooted in that. How can we be better? Let's challenge ourselves. Let's not be complacent. Let's not just accept that we're the greatest, God's greatest gift to wine, and that we're the best wine on earth. What can we be doing better and differently? And it does challenge the status quo, and that's naturally going to ruffle some feathers. But I love that about you.
So look at what we've done here. They've literally only shoveled little pieces to free up the soil. So when we're watering and doing everything, we've got access. You've got all rock. This was all rock that they have literally spent years coming up here with rock crushers to put all this together. So you've got a site on top of a mountain with red chert, all this compressed plankton. And now when you're tasting the wine, you taste a minerality that comes from this. It's not a fruit bomb. This comes from this unique soil profile, and it's got earthiness and it's got minerality, and there's few things as cool as picking up the rock and feeling this, and you feel this in this wine. You know this doesn't come from the valley floor. You know it comes from someplace that's absolutely unique and fabulous, and it correlates. And you know, every bottle of adversity has a painting on it that represents something about the site. And the Hefe bottling has the color of the chert in there. And when you taste this wine, it's different. It's not standard. It comes from one site. And the fact that my team, we can capture this and put it in a glass is like the coolest thing in the world.
It is cool. Well, this is unbelievably fascinating, and honestly, I could probably spend the whole day out here just learning more about this, but I want to talk about blending. Why don't we move on to the next segment of our journey, and we'll be right back.
I do not have the dreamy eyes that you're used to with Lauren, but I will do the best I can.
Okay, so we're back here at the house where you and your lovely wife Heidi are so generous to often host guests and clients, and I'm really excited to talk about this part of the winemaking process, which is the blending process, because to me this is where so much of the magic happens, and I feel like most people have no idea just how nuanced and granular the process is. I mean, we're talking about not only sourcing from different vineyards, but different blocks within those vineyards, sometimes different rows within those vineyards, obviously different varietals within those vineyards, but then even more nuance going into the different types of barrel, perhaps different oaks, different toasting. So you are a blending master. I want to understand, what is your process behind it? There has to be some type of process of elimination of sort of whittling it down to the final product, and how do you get there?
You know, the blending process, some winemakers will take their ability to blend out of the picture by the way they make their wines and blending their wines. in racking their wines. At Bevan Cellars, what we've done from day one is we keep every barrel as its own entity its whole life. So when we have a fermentation that's, let's say, 5 tons and we're going to get 12 barrels out of it, we literally will go from the tank to directly to the barrel. We don't homogenize the lot. We don't keep the different pieces and put them all together. What we try to do is keep them all individual. So when we start blending, we'll literally have 12 different children, each one with its completely own personality. So the first barrel that comes from the tank is not going to have the tannin and the weight, but it's going to have lively acidity and oftentimes pure fruit.
Okay.
The last barrel is going to come from the press. It's going to have more phenolics and weight. And so let's take, for instance, the Tench Calixtro that we're tasting right now.
2023 Tench Vineyard down in Oakville.
Correct. And with this wine, we usually have around 18 barrels, and it never ends up with more than 12 barrels going in. And so what we'll do is we'll taste every barrel, and then I take notes on them, and I evaluate them on aromatics, textures, and flavors, and I score them from 1 to 5. And then I write my tasting note for each barrel. And then what I'll do is I'll take my 5 favorite barrels and I'll put those together and taste it next to a composite from the whole block. And I'd say half the time my 5 favorite barrels together don't go together as well as the whole block. It's kind of like 5 lead guitar players playing all over each other. You need to have a little more harmony. And so we'll then take those and add things to them to try to come up with the best possible blend or take things out.
So it's, sorry to interrupt. So it's interesting that you mentioned about having like 5 guitarists playing at the same time, because I almost view the role of a winemaker similar to that of like a music producer, right? The grapes are essentially your session players. They are your musicians, and your job is to get the absolute best out of them. So you're looking at each one of these different barrels and trying to get the absolute best you can out of it, and then trying to understand essentially the harmony of how they all go together.
Correct. And so the whole process comes down to whittling pieces away and putting different components together until we find the highest potential level of excellence. And at the winery, if we would have racked all of our barrels together like many people do and then put it back to barrel, you lose the individual nuances of every barrel. So most wineries will rack everything once or twice between when they ferment and when they go to bottle. We never do that. We literally, when we will get ready to go to bottle and we take the wine out of the barrels, we will have whole berries literally in the bottom of those barrels. Everything we do once that wine goes to barrel is to maintain the intensity and the verve of that barrel. And I don't want to lose tannin, because the way we make the wines at the winery is we do everything we can to protect the mid-palate richness and weight without getting kitty cat tongue. I don't want a hard wine.
Kitty cat tongue.
The goal during primary fermentation is we taste every day. Last year it was 78 straight days, and I taste every ferment every day. I've never missed in 21 years.
That was going to be my next question. Is like, let's actually break this down on like how long of a timeline this process takes. So let's start at the beginning. Let's go from harvest. Okay, so from harvest and actually taking the fruit off the vine, at what point then do you start tasting? How many months later?
So I'll start tasting about a month after we finish malolactic fermentation.
Okay.
And it goes through its first sulfuring cycle. And so once the wine's sat and it's gone through malic and we've lost all of the bound gases in it, we'll start tasting just to get an idea on where the wine's at. We won't do the heavy lifting until December after the harvest, and then we'll start really focusing on the individual wines the following year, December. So we're looking at 12 to 14 months before I really start to do the big blending.
12 to 14 months before you start blending.
Correct. I want the wines to sit in barrel, absorb some of the oak, and then literally start to give some of the oak back towards the
Sure. And how often are you tasting over those 12 to 14 months?
I'll taste the wines every month to 2 months.
Every month to 2 months.
And I won't be tasting every barrel, but I'll taste composites just to see where they're at. But, you know, for us, there's not a lot for us to do. We're not going to rack the wines because I don't want to lose any of the energy.
You've mentioned racking multiple times. For people that don't know, explain what racking is and why you're not doing that.
Well, so racking serves a bunch of different purposes, but racking is taking the wine out of barrel, moving it to a tank, and then putting it back in barrel. And you can be very uptight about it. And when we have had to rack only a handful of times, we'll rack from a barrel to a stainless steel barrel, then back to that same barrel so we don't lose that individual barrel's personality.
Got it. Okay.
A lot of people will rack all of the barrels to one tank and then come back to the barrels. So they basically homogenized it, and they've taken their ability to blend out of the equation. And I know traditionally that's the way 99% of the wines in the world have been made. But I think when you're trying to identify individual flavor profiles and textures that go with a vintage in a vineyard in a block, and you know what it should be, you should always focus on the highest potential level of excellence, and not every barrel is going to be the highest level of potential excellence. My hope is and why I grabbed all these samples today, is I try to make every vineyard's voice as loud as possible without going out of tone. So for me, it's not a house style. I guess the house style would be the fact that we manage our phenolics, our tannins, so aggressively that the wines never get hard. But that's where I want the house style to end, just in the textural impact we have on how we manage it during primary fermentation. After that, everything is geared towards crafting blends that speak to the highest potential level of what I think that vineyard's voice is, having tasted wines off of that vineyard for a long period of time.
It goes back to the analogy I was saying about a music producer, right? Your job is to get the absolute very best out of the musicians that you're working with. Your job is to get the absolute very best out of that vineyard.
Winemakers who think they're artists are the narcissists. What we are is we're the caretakers of balance. First of all, your wines have to be balanced and fabulous. When it comes to the blends, you're putting components together, but that's putting a puzzle together. Mother Nature is the artist. The site, the weather conditions, the soil, and all of those things, that's where the flavors and aromatics come from. I don't worry about how my wines are going to taste or smell. I worry about how they're going to feel in those components coming together for the textural balance. And that's where a winemaker can shine, because the earth, the nature, this beautiful valley gives us all of those flavors. We just have to make sure that there's a high level of execution when it comes to the way they feel in the mouth and they're presented.
How did you even come to have this level of knowledge? Because there's so much science and chemistry that goes into this, and your manipulation of it. It was very humble of you to not refer to yourself as an artist, but there is so much artistry in what you do that makes your wines what they are. I mean, look, we're blessed to have just this incredible environment behind us here, with obviously more soil types than any other wine region in the world, and ideal growing conditions. Everybody's making great wine, but it is the individual and their stories that I think translate through the wine that make them special and unique. What is yours, and how did you come to have this level of knowledge?
Well, I'm a nerd, and
It's not how most people would describe you, so we're clear.
But I'm an introverted extrovert. I know I'm usually the loudest voice at every party, but when I'm not out and about, my wife will tell you I'm in my room. I don't have a television on. I read, I research. You know, I wrote a syndicated wine column for a number of years, which gave me access to the world's great winemakers. I still have boxes full of legal pads from my 20s and 30s when I would open bottles of wine at night. I would take copious notes and break all the wines down. And I learned stylistically what I wanted when I did make wine, knowing that eventually I would. There was no way I wasn't going to make wine. When it came time to farm, I looked at regions and styles that I wanted. And one of the first things I did was realize that I don't like a high level of pyrazines in my wine. I add Cab Franc to almost everything because I like some level of herbaceousness. I don't like pyrazines. So I reached out to some of the farmers in Chinon in France, where they make only Cabernet Franc, and talked to them about how they farmed and how important pre-verasion, when the grapes go from green to red, sun exposure into the grapes, is to break down those compounds. And so, you know, when you talk about this style, a big piece of it goes all the way back to early season farming. We open up canopies so much more aggressively than most of the people in this valley. when I started farming this way, people would call me and say, you better go look at what your crew did. They took down all the leaves. And I'm like, yep, and that's exactly what I wanted them to do.
Right. Okay, so last thing that I want to talk about while we're sitting here. So we have these small bottles here, these vials that I know are filled with the 2024 vintage, which you're still working on the blending process for. And these are meant to really just sort of serve as an illustration. What do we have? We have 7 here. But I've been over here before, and I've gone into your garage and seen quite literally hundreds of bottles. How many different bottles are you tasting through?
So on some weekends, we've had upwards of 280 half bottles. Each barrel we get a half bottle of, and we literally line them up on the table and we start scoring the bottles. And Heidi will join me sometimes.
280.
280, and over the course
Is
of
that, sorry, is
2 or
that
3
just
days,
Bevan Cellars?
Just Bevan Cellars.
So we haven't gotten to Adversity yet. We haven't gotten to any of the other wineries that you make wine for, like Lerner Project or Carter. This is just Bevan Cellars.
Correct, and I do every winery the same way. It's usually 3 to 4 days, and my team knows on Sunday I'm going to send them a list of all the barrels that I've run out of, because I've put so many different blends together that I need to get more wine. And oftentimes I'll run and grab more samples on Sundays. But it's you sitting down with your children, you know, getting to know them and putting them together, and you just keep doing it until you feel like you've got your highest possible quality level. When I blend and I taste, and I'm always doing that, it's such an important piece of the whole puzzle. When somebody spends $200+ on a bottle of wine, they deserve your best effort. They don't deserve a winemaker who goes in, tastes a tank, and says this is fine. They have paid such a steep price for something. It should be made with all of the attention to detail and love and care you can possibly give it. And I'm never going to disrespect that. As somebody who owns a couple thousand bottles of wine I didn't make, who spends more money on wine than his wife ever would want him to, I know what I want when I pull a cork, and I want excellence. And I'm not going to disrespect the people who work so bloody hard to make a dollar, that buy my wine, and not give them something that's worthy of that investment.
I love that. I love that. All right, we're trying something a little different. We're going to end each episode with the same question. If you could have one bottle of wine in one place with one person, who would it be? Where would it be? What would it be?
You know, I would love to have the 2015 Apps E Trockenbeeren Auslese from Klaus-Peter Keller in Germany. And I would love to have that with my wife, with an overly buttered bowl of popcorn, watching the sunset go down on top of some mountain. And I would want to be holding her hand and looking her in the eyes and enjoying each and every second of that magic.
Man, if you weren't already taken, I'd swoop you up so quickly, we would just run off into the sunset together. What a poet.
I don't know how much fun we'd have.
What a poet, what a romantic. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Russell Bevan, you are such a great steward for this valley, and just appreciate everything that you do and the level of just commitment and dedication that you put into your craft. It's magic to watch it work. So thank you for giving us some insight to it. And next time you're in Napa, check it out. Bevan Cellars, Adversity, along with many other great wineries that he makes wine for. Definitely need to check it out.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Resident Reserve. If you'd like to watch another episode, click here or here, or I'm still not sure where it is, but somewhere, and make sure to subscribe.